Okay, it's day 198 in Ukraine, 198 days since the Russians have invaded. I mean, it's pretty amazing, especially when you recognize that the Russians only thought it would take a few days to knock over the capital and maybe 2 weeks to secure the country. So it's 198 days. Here's what's going on. Ukraine is breaking through, and it is really amazing to see. I'm going to paint the picture with all the news articles. Thank you for sticking with me. If you don't know me, my name is Darren Gertis. I'm just a mild-mannered professor in the United States. I teach leadership and power and influence and management and those kind of classes. And so I was fascinated with Zelensky, and then I just started following and tracking what's going on. So I just track the news and tell you the story each day. So if you aren't familiar with me, please subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow doing the same thing. Okay, here we go with the daily events and news stories. So the first thing is I want to look at Zelensky, and I've read most of his speeches through the first 5 months, and I've just been intermittent recently because there's so much going on. Okay, so yesterday he said more than 1,000 square kilometers of territory of Ukraine has been liberated since the beginning of September. That's pretty amazing. That's a lot of ground, and it's mostly up in northern Kharkiv, although there's some in Kherson as well. Okay, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Valery Zaluzny, thanked residents. By the way, I'm also an American, so if I slaughter Ukrainian names and you're not familiar with me, please forgive me. I'm just trying to track the news, but I'm not Ukrainian personally, and I don't claim to be. Um, Thanked residents of temporarily occupied areas and echoed that the more than 1,000 square kilometers of occupied Ukraine had been liberated. Um, the British, and I try to triangulate on the news, so here's the British intelligence update. Fighting continues in southern and eastern and northern Ukraine. It's all over. We expected it to continue into Donbass. We didn't expect Kharkiv, and we knew that there was a front in the south in Kherson. On September 8th to 2022, the military of Belarus, Ukraine's northern neighbor, started routine training exercises. Belarus is like that annoying person that just keeps interjecting themselves when they don't really have anything to say, just trying to be relevant. And they keep doing this, but they're probably not going to be that much of a threat. So they were early on, and they had to deploy troops to the northern border around Belarus just to ensure that the threat wasn't going to be, but I don't think anything will come of that. Okay, here's what's really going on. This is The Guardian, the British newspaper, The Guardian. Russia said that Friday that it was dispatching reinforcements to Kharkiv region in eastern Ukraine. That's the northeast where the other counteroffensive is going on, where Kiev's forces have announced robust gains as part of a broader counteroffensive. Okay, there's a 500-kilometer border going from the very south in the Kherson region all the way up to Kharkiv. And the Ukrainians have been masterful just picking a place where they think there's a weak spot and attacking there. Russian state media broadcast footage of columns of tanks, support vehicles, and artillery traveling along paved roads and dirt tracks. That's really interesting because the Russians have to keep projecting this. Oh, we're on top of it. We have this powerful thing going on. It's an easy thing. It's just a special military operation. So they can't admit defeat or mistakes or that they have had a hard time. The General Staff of the Ukraine Armed Forces said Friday that it has pushed back against Russian attacks near 10 settlements, the Kyiv Independent reported. The staff of the Russian forces had launched more than 12 missiles, more than 12 airstrikes on Ukrainian territory in the past 24 hours. And so you'll see articles like this. This is Interfax Ukraine, where 14 people were wounded, including 3 children aged 3, 11, and 15, obviously neo-Nazis. That the children have been hospitalized. It's just tragic. Like you're killing civilians because your military can't win. The invaders shelled Kharkiv using MLRS. That's large rockets. There was information about hits in Shivinsky district, and particularly a kindergarten. Well, that was a threat. Was damaged, and a fire broke out. Okay, here is Pravda. Again, I tried to triangulate. So what I've just shown you so far was Zelensky's speech. Uh, Twitter from the Ministry of Defense in Britain, The Guardian, Interfax Ukraine. Here's Pravda. Pravda is Russian and it means truth, and it usually is not. Russia says there is no talk about Kyiv's breakthrough in a counteroffensive. Okay, at a meeting of the UN Security Council, the ambassador denied reports about Kyiv's success in a counteroffensive. What? Like everybody else knows that something else is going on here except you? What's going on? Okay. There was no talk of any breakthrough of the armed forces of Ukraine. According to Nabinska, the administration of Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky, is, so the Ukrainians are trying to, quote, create at least the appearance of the country's ability to attack. No, it's on like Donkey Kong, and your denials are not going to change that. It will change that in the perception of Russia to the degree that you can lock it down, but it's not going to actually change what's going on the ground. Okay, here is The Guardian again. Russia sends reinforcements to Kharkiv to repel Ukraine's counterattack. Moscow sending these columns we just talked about. In a video address on Fridays, Volodymyr Zelensky said Ukrainian forces had liberated more than 30 settlements in Kharkiv. Russia installed official in the occupied part of Kharkiv admitted, now this is really amazing because this almost never happens. A Russian installed official admitted that the troops were on the back foot. The very fact that a breach of our defenses is already a substantial victory for the Ukrainian armed forces. That's like the truest thing that I've heard from Russia in the last 6.5 months. Validi Ganich told state television, adding that Ukraine's advance had been very sharp and rapid. Okay, where is the advance? So the big offensive is down this way in Kherson. The Donbass is over here, and this Donbass is over here. This is the area that they've been trying to take, and Kharkiv is the second largest city. They had taken Kharkiv, they pushed them back to here or around the outskirts, and now they've taken all this real estate. It's really pretty amazing what they've actually done. What they really want to do is get Izium. So they want to attack. See how they have this front line here? They want to come up from here and come down here. And if they can do that, they're going to take Izium. Izium's important because it's a big crossroads coming down through Donbass or Donetsk. Donbass is a name for this whole like region, Donetsk and Luhansk, but they want to get this whole region of Donetsk and then declare victory. Yay, we've liberated them from the neo-Nazis. That's what they really want to do. So that's what's going on there. Okay, for weeks, Ukrainian officials had telegraphed plans for a planned counterattack in southern Kherson, but instead, the main focus of this week's counterattack has been Kharkiv in the northeast. It's a surprise. So, when they think they're attacking down here, they redeployed all of their force, well, not all their forces, but a large chunk of their forces to the south. And so it was a lot weaker up here. And so now they're having to redeploy. Moscow responded Friday by firing rockets into the center of the city, attacking a kindergarten because those kindergartners, they might have something up their sleeve. As revenge for Ukrainian success on the battlefield, is what Zelensky's chief of staff said. And to some degree, just to show that they can actually do it. At least 10 people. This is This is Reuters said talking about that same missile attack. At least 10 people wounded in the center of Ukraine's second city, Kharkiv, hit by a rocket attack on Friday. Rockets hit a children's art center, a school, as well as private homes. So, yeah, I triangulate on this because the first one that I showed you was Interfax Ukraine. Oh, well, you can't believe that Ukrainian reported that it hit a kindergarten. Okay, well, that's why I'm showing you the AP, or I'm not sorry, not AP, Reuters as well. Okay, here's The Hill. The Hill is a political kind of newspaper in the United States. General Mark Miley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said, quote, "The war is not over." Let me highlight this. "The war is not over, but so far the Russian strategic objectives have been defeated. Despite being outgunned and outmanned, the Ukrainians have demonstrated superior tactical proficiency, and they've demonstrated a superior will to fight for their own country, fight for their freedom." Um, an American Pentagon official, like 2, 3 weeks ago, said on a scale of 1 to 10, the Ukrainians have been a 12 in their ability to fight, and that's pretty amazing. Miley allowed that Moscow had achieved minor tactical successes in various parts in eastern Ukraine, and they have been. incrementally making, a kilometer a week progress toward Bakhmut. But so what? They have not achieved all the Donbass, and that's really their goal, was to achieve the Donbass, and that's what I was just talking about. Okay, the CIA director, again, he's agreeing with this kind of assessment. Now, it's no surprise that an American military intelligence or American army chief, as in the case with Miley here, is saying, "Hey, it's the Russians are losing." But they don't say that lightly. Where you see this all the time in Russian media saying, like, propaganda wise, the Americans aren't saying things that they don't believe are true. Here's William Burns. He said that Putin had underestimated Ukrainian resolve when he decided to invade in February. Putin's bet right now is that he's going to be tougher than the Ukrainians, good luck, the Europeans, maybe, and the Americans. I believe that my colleagues at the CIA believe that Putin is wrong about that bet, and he was profoundly wrong in his assumption going back to last February about Ukrainians' will to resist. Now, I said Ukrainians, good luck. They're on their home territory, right? They're fighting for their very homes. Europeans, they're uncomfortable because they have all these, the sanctions on Russia are jacking up fuel prices and energy and inflation. Americans too are feeling the pinch of inflation, but that's nothing like the Ukrainians' resolve. So it's possible that they could break European will to support. And that's what I think Putin is betting on more than anything else. So stick with them. Not only has weakness of the Russian military been exposed, as the CIA chief, but there's going to be long-term damage done to Russian economy and generations of Russians. And so that's the assessment of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, that's Mark Miley, and the CIA director is, it's not going your way, Russia. Okay, International Atomic Agency Director General Rafael Grossi, he's calling for a security protection zone. Now, I thought that the report was unfortunately tepid. You could read between the lines and see that, you should have said, hey, no, Russia's doing this, but they didn't. And I thought, you know, come on, man, just tell us what it is. But but I think that there might have been some strategy. Now because it was even-handed, he can call for the security zone and get more support rather than way down on one side or the other. So he might have been smarter than I thought. Shelling has caused a complete blackout in Endahar, the satellite city of Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, and compromised the safe operation of the nearby power plant. So maybe I misjudged him, and if I did, I'm sorry, General Rafael Grossi. Please accept my apology. That might have been a brilliant stroke. Okay, the help is coming from Europe. The EU Security or EU Council approves economic proposal for another tranche of European euros $5 billion on the way to Ukraine, and that's important because there was an economist talking about like they got to get their act in order economically, or there's going to be a problem. Okay, about a month ago, Moscow fined Google. They fined Google for allowing Western propaganda, like people like me, on their platform. A court in Moscow has rejected an appeal now. Google appealed it, rejected an appeal against an order to pay a fine of more than 21.7 billion rubles. That's $352 million over information. Now, you can go to jail for 15 years, upwards of 15 years, for speaking out against the state, against the special military operation, or defaming Russia. So they're fined 352 million over information distributed about Russia's ongoing unprovoked invasion of Ukraine in its YouTube sharing platform. It was a second conviction for Google. There was an earlier fine in April. A considerable lower fine of only 11 million rubles, or 188,500 or $188,500, saying YouTube, quote, turned into one of the key platforms spreading fake news. This is Moscow saying that YouTube is spreading fake news. Moscow, who is claiming that nothing to see here, we're just having a special military operation and everything's going well, and it's to find those neo-Nazis. Wow. It is also forbidden describing the attack against Ukraine as an invasion or a war instead of being called a special military operation. So if anyone like me calls it a war, like Russia's at war, I just said it, and YouTube carries that in Russia, that's what's going on here. How bizarre is that? But They control what truth actually is, or what the definition of truth is. Okay, last thing, and I'm going to end with this. This is Pravda. I always like to end with Pravda because it's a good time. Pravda means truth, and this is Russia's state television or state media. Switzerland repositions as World War III combatant. Why? Because they took a side early on, soon after the start of hostilities. Now, Switzerland has been notoriously neutral, right? Even in World War II, everybody kind of knows that. Soon after the hostilities, President Cassis publicly remarked to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, "We are impressed by the courage with which your people are fighting for freedom and peace, and we are impressed by the way you defend your fundamental values of the free world, which are also our fundamental values." That was a big statement for neutral Switzerland. Okay, so the article just goes on to say the president's remarks harbor biases. Right, because it's not pro Russian. They can be best seen if we insert his remarks into Russian bias. Here is our hypothetical remarks. Wait, here is our. Somebody needs to edit. Here is our hypothetical remarks President Casas might have made to President Vladimir Putin. We are impressed by the courage with which your people are fighting for security guarantees in the face of hostile NATO advancement to your borders. Okay, if NATO is advancing east, let's just, I've said this before, but if NATO is advancing east, it's not that NATO is advancing east. It is that the girlfriends that you had in Poland, in the Baltics, in Ukraine, in other places where you have dominated, have run away from you into the arms of the football player over here called NATO. And that's why you say they're advancing. They're not advancing. Your former dominated countries have run away from you because they don't want to be dominated by you anymore, and they want the security from the other guy. Okay, that's what's going on. And we are impressed by the way that you defend against the spread of neo-Nazism in modern Europe, a cause consistent with our fundamental values. Mm, where are the neo-Nazis? Have we actually found any yet? I mean, seriously. Okay, so this article is just a joke, and I mean, but this is the kind of stuff that the Russians are feasting on, and that is why I said in just a few days ago, there is a reason that, like, okay, so if I look at my videos here, go back just some, there's a reason why the Russians are believing what they're believing. I said this is why Russians support the war, and if you go back and look at it, it's they're just feasting on stuff like this all day long because that's what's allowed in the media, because this isn't. So that's what's going on today. The Ukrainians are making great strides. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares enough to actually watch this video. If you're still here, subscribe. I'll be back doing this again tomorrow.